The shuttle doors opened with a low hiss, and Daniel Hayes stepped onto the marble-like floor of the Scifi docking bay. His heart was racing. He had trained for months for this moment, yet nothing truly prepared a man for standing inside the palace of one of the oldest empires in the galaxy. The Scifi were tall, proud, and elegant, with skin that shimmered faintly under the lights. Their golden armor looked more ceremonial than practical, but Daniel knew it carried hidden energy fields strong enough to deflect most small arms fire. Every soldier that lined the walls turned their sharp, pupilless eyes on him as he walked. Daniel adjusted his collar nervously. He wore Earth's official diplomatic uniform, a black suit with a silver crest on the chest, the emblem of the United Earth Alliance. He was no soldier, no warrior, just a diplomat, but he carried something heavier than a weapon. He carried the hope of humanity. For hundreds of years, the Scifi had ruled their sector with an iron hand. They respected strength, despised weakness, and saw new civilizations as either tools or threats. Humanity had only recently revealed itself to the galactic stage, and today, for the first time in history, a human would meet the heir to the Scifi throne. Daniel's translator AI whispered into his ear through a hidden earpiece. "Walk steady. Bow when they present the princess. Do not speak until spoken. And whatever you do, Daniel, do not touch her." He swallowed. That part he remembered clearly. Physical contact was considered sacred in Scifi culture. Only family, lovers, or those bound by ritual could touch. But Daniel was human. Shaking hands was second nature to him. He only hoped he wouldn't make some clumsy mistake. The massive doors to the throne hall opened. A hush fell across the chamber as Daniel entered. The hall stretched wide, lined with alien nobles in flowing robes, their faces masked in gold. At the far end sat the throne itself, carved from black crystal that reflected faint streams of light, and beside it stood Princess Serenia. Daniel stopped in his tracks for a heartbeat. She was unlike any alien he had ever seen on holoscreens. Tall and graceful, with pale silver skin that caught the light like moonlight on water, and long hair that shimmered in shades of violet. Her eyes glowed faintly, sharp and deep, as if they could see through him. The chamber's herald struck his staff on the floor 3 times. His voice boomed, echoing across the walls, presenting Daniel Hayes, representative of the United Earth Alliance. First of his people to walk the halls of Zareth, he comes seeking peace. Daniel forced himself forward, every step heavy. He reached the center of the hall and bowed as the protocol demanded. When he rose, he expected the princess to remain cold and distant, as the Scifi were known to be. But instead, she descended the steps of the throne, walking toward him with slow, measured grace. The entire hall murmured in surprise. She stopped in front of him, close enough that he could see the faint glow of her veins beneath her skin. "You are small," she said, in perfect formal English. Her voice was soft, but carried across the chamber. "Yet you walk with steady legs. You are the human?" Daniel's mouth went dry. He nodded. "Yes, Your Highness. I am Daniel Hayes of Earth. I come on behalf of my people with respect." Her eyes studied him carefully. There was no smile, no warmth, only sharp curiosity. And then, he did it. Without thinking, without remembering the translator's warning, Daniel extended his hand, a simple human gesture. A handshake. The chamber froze. Every alien noble gasped. Guards tensed, their spears humming with crackling energy. The translator AI in his ear shrieked in panic, "Daniel, stop, do not—" But it was too late. Princess Serenia's gaze dropped to his outstretched hand. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The hall felt as silent as deep space. Then slowly she raised her own hand. Her fingers brushed against his. Their palms met. Daniel felt warmth, strange, electric warmth, spread through his skin. For him, it was just a handshake. Nothing unusual. But for the princess, something happened. Her eyes widened. Her lips parted in a sharp gasp. Her body trembled, her shoulders shaking visibly. She jerked her hand back, clutching it to her chest as if she had touched fire. A ripple of whispers broke through the hall. Nobles turned to each other in shock. Guards raised their weapons halfway. uncertain. Daniel froze. His mind screamed. What did I just do? I'm sorry, he stammered. I didn't mean... But Serena wasn't listening. She stared at him with an expression Daniel couldn't read. Half fear, half something deeper. Her glowing eyes locked onto his, and she whispered words not meant for the crowd, yet loud enough that all could hear. It is him. The hall erupted in noise. Nobles shouted. Some hissed in anger, others in awe. The word repeated among them, in their alien tongue, an old heavy word that Daniel's translator struggled to process. The herald shouted, "Silence!" But the chamber was chaos. Daniel stood frozen in the center, heart pounding as he realized that something enormous had just happened. Something he didn't understand. Princess Serena trembled, her hand still pressed against her chest, her eyes never leaving him. The throne hall of Zareth buzzed like a hive of angry insects. Whispers turned into shouts, shouts into arguments, and the once orderly court collapsed into chaos. Daniel Hayes stood frozen in the center of it all, still not sure what he had done. A handshake, that was all. A simple human greeting. But Princess Serena stood trembling, her silver skin glistening faintly under the throne hall's light. Her hand pressed tightly against her chest as if she feared her heart would leap out. She whispered again, though softer this time, "It is him." Daniel's translator AI worked furiously, repeating alien words flying across the chamber. One term kept repeating, Vathar. The AI struggled but gave a rough meaning, the hand that shakes stars. Daniel's stomach dropped. That sounded very bad. The herald pounded his staff, trying to restore order. The emperor himself was not present, only the princess. But even her authority did not silence the nobles. One noble with a high golden mask shouted, "The prophecy speaks of doom. If this creature is truly the Vathar, then he must be destroyed before the empire falls." Another noble countered, "And if he is the one who will unite us, would you risk defying the will of fate?" The chamber erupted again, sides forming. Instantly, half crying for Daniel's death, the other half uncertain, fearful. Daniel's heart hammered. He leaned slightly toward Serena and whispered, "What's going on? What did I do?" Her glowing eyes flicked to him, sharp and unsettled. For the first time, her perfect composure cracked. She did not answer. Instead, she turned toward the crowd and raised her hand. The chamber slowly quieted, though not completely. Her voice rang out strong despite the tremor in her body. "Enough," she commanded. "The human will not be harmed. He is under my protection until I learn the truth." The nobles hissed, but no one dared challenge her openly. Serena gestured for Daniel to follow. Guards moved to escort them out of the throne hall. Daniel obeyed, his mind spinning. The corridors of the palace were long and dim, lined with glowing crystals instead of torches. The guards said nothing, their faces unreadable behind golden helmets. Finally, they stopped before a set of tall doors and opened them for the princess and Daniel. Inside was a private chamber, lavish yet strangely empty, decorated with flowing banners and a single table of polished black stone. Serena dismissed. The guards, with a sharp command in her native tongue, reluctantly they left, sealing the doors behind them. The two were alone. Daniel hesitated. He had no idea if he was in trouble or not. The princess turned toward him, her eyes unreadable. "Do you know what you have done?" she asked softly. Daniel raised his hands. I only shook your hand. That's all. It's normal where I come from." Her head tilted. "Normal? To take the hand of a stranger? To bind yourself with a single gesture? It's a greeting," Daniel explained quickly. "A way of saying, I come in peace. We do it all the time." Serena stared at him as if he had spoken madness. Her lips pressed into a thin line, then she slowly shook her head. "You touched me," she whispered. "Do you understand? Among my people, touch is not casual, it is binding, it awakens instinct, memory, blood. When you touched me, I felt something. A storm. Fire. I have never felt it before." Daniel blinked. "I didn't mean to." She cut him off. Do not apologize. The old prophecies speak of this. Long ago, before the Empire rose, seers spoke of an outsider, a foreigner not of Zareth, who would come with empty hands yet carry the power to shatter empires. They called him Vathar, her voice dropped to a whisper, almost afraid of her own words. The hand that shakes stars. Daniel's mouth went dry. And you think that's me? Her eyes locked onto his, glowing faintly in the dim chamber. When you touched me, my body trembled. I felt the prophecy's weight. So yes, I believe it is you. Daniel staggered back, nearly laughing out of disbelief. I'm not here to destroy empires. I'm just a diplomat. I came for peace, not prophecy. Cyrinya's gaze softened, but only slightly. Prophecies do not care for your intentions. Hours passed. Daniel remained in the private chamber under heavy guard. Food was brought, strange glowing fruit and a thick drink that tasted faintly of metal. He barely touched it. His mind was too restless. Outside, he could hear muffled arguments between nobles. He caught fragments through the translator, demands for his execution, warnings of doom, others insisting the princess had the right to decide his fate. As the twin moons of Zareth rose beyond the tall windows, a faint chime echoed in the chamber. Daniel looked around until he noticed a small device on the wall glowing. He approached carefully. The device flickered and suddenly, a figure appeared, holographic, faint, and distorted. It was a Zarethi soldier, armor dull and scratched, nothing like the polished guards he had seen. The soldier's voice was urgent, whispering quickly. Human, listen carefully. They are planning to kill you tonight. A faction of nobles fears the prophecy. They will not wait for the princess's decision. Daniel's pulse spiked. What? Who are you? No time, the soldier hissed. If you value your life, you must leave the palace before the next bell. Meet me at the eastern gate. I will guide you. The hologram vanished. Daniel stood, frozen, his hands shaking. He didn't know if this was a trick or a true warning, but every instinct screamed at him. He was not safe here. The doors opened suddenly. Cyrinya stepped in, her silver skin glowing faintly in the moonlight. She studied him quietly for a long moment. You look troubled, she said softly. Daniel hesitated. Should he tell her? Could he trust her? Finally, he spoke carefully. I heard something, that some nobles want me dead. Her eyes darkened, glowing brighter with emotion. That is true. She did not even deny it. Many fear what you represent. Some would rather spill innocent blood than face change. Daniel swallowed. So what happens now? Cyrinya stepped closer, her expression unreadable. Now, I must decide whether to protect you or let them end you. His breath caught. And which will you choose? For a moment, silence hung heavy between them. Then, for the first time since their meeting, Cyrinya's composure broke. She looked conflicted. I do not know, she admitted, but I feel something I cannot ignore. When you touched me, I trembled. Not from fear, from something greater. If I let you die, I fear I will destroy more than just you. I will destroy the path of fate. She turned sharply toward the window. But if I protect you, the empire itself may turn against me. Daniel's mind spun. He had come for peace. Instead, he was now tangled in alien politics, ancient prophecy, and threats of assassination. Cyrinya looked back at him, her glowing, eyes piercing. You must be careful, Daniel Hayes of Earth. Tonight, the stars themselves watch your steps. Later that night, Daniel lay awake on the couch provided in the chamber. Guards stood outside, silent and unmoving. Yet he could not rest. Every shadow looked dangerous, every sound suspicious. Then he heard it. A faint scrape at the window. Slowly, he approached. The window looked out into the courtyard below, bathed in pale moonlight. And there, among the shadows, stood the soldier from the hologram. He raised his hand in a signal. Come. Daniel's heart pounded. He looked back at the sealed doors where guards stood. He looked at the window again. The warning echoed in his head. They will come for you tonight. Run. He clenched, his fists. The cold moonlight washed over Daniel's face as he stared down at the soldier standing in the courtyard. The figure motioned again. Come quickly. Daniel's pulse raced. He turned toward the locked chamber doors, where 2 Zarethi guards stood, motionless. If the nobles truly wanted him dead, those guards might already be part of the plan. He couldn't risk waiting. He took a deep breath, pulled the window latch, and eased it open. The night air rushed in, sharp and cool. Carefully, Daniel climbed out, lowering himself down the stone wall until he dropped the last few feet into the courtyard below. The soldier caught his arm before he stumbled. His armor was battered, his eyes sharp. This way, the alien whispered. They moved quickly, keeping to the shadows. The palace was alive with activity, patrols on the walls, glowing lamps in the gardens, silent servants moving about. But no one seemed to notice Daniel slipping through the dark. At last, they reached a narrow gate in the outer wall. The soldier produced a crystal key, pressed it into the lock, and the gate slid open with a faint hum. Daniel was just about to step through when a voice stopped him cold. Going somewhere, human? He spun around. Princess Serenia stood in the moonlight, her silver skin glowing faintly, her violet hair flowing in the night breeze. Her glowing eyes fixed on him, unreadable. Daniel froze. I thought that you could run, she interrupted. Her voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. She stepped closer, her gaze flicking briefly to the soldier. You would betray me by stealing him from my care? The soldier bowed his head, but his jaw clenched. Forgive me, princess, but the nobles mean to kill him. If he stays, he dies. Serenia's eyes softened slightly, though her voice stayed firm. Leave us. The soldier hesitated, then obeyed, disappearing into the shadows. Daniel stood awkwardly, unsure whether to speak. The princess walked closer, her eyes never leaving his. You would have run into the night, alone, on a world you do not understand. Do you truly think you would survive? Daniel swallowed. I didn't know who to trust. Some said you might not protect me. Her lips pressed together, but then she sighed softly. You are not wrong. I do not know if protecting you will save my empire or doom it. Daniel hesitated, then asked quietly, Then why stop me? For the first time, her expression cracked. A faint shadow of emotion crossed her perfect features. Because when you touched me, something awakened. I do not understand it, but I cannot ignore it. If you die now, I will never learn what it means. Daniel exhaled slowly. He didn't fully understand her words, but he could sense her conflict was real. Finally, Serenia gestured. Come. If they wish to kill you, then let them try, but they will face me first. She led him through hidden passages beneath the palace, narrow tunnels lined with glowing crystals. At last, they emerged into the lower city of Zareth, a sprawling maze of narrow streets, stone towers, and markets still busy even at night. Daniel was stunned. From above, the city had looked grand and orderly. But down here, it was alive with noise, smells, and people. The air was heavy with smoke and spice. Merchants shouted, children darted through the streets. Poor citizens huddled near fires. For the first time, Daniel saw not the Empire's polished face, but its suffering heart. The princess moved quickly, her royal robes making her stand out. Citizens stopped and stared in shock. A princess in the lower city was unheard of, but what shocked them more was the sight of Daniel, a strange alien walking beside her. Whispers followed them. Children pointed. Old men bowed their heads. The word spread like wildfire. The human, the one who shook the princess's hand. Daniel felt the weight of 100 eyes on him. He leaned toward Serena and muttered, "This doesn't feel safe." Her voice was quiet but steady. "It never is in the lower city, but here, you will see the truth my nobles hide." They turned a corner and entered a marketplace. Suddenly, a loud crack split the air. A support beam holding up a high wooden platform snapped. The structure collapsed with a scream of metal and stone. Children were trapped beneath falling debris. Without thinking, Daniel sprinted forward. He threw himself under the collapsing wood, bracing it with his shoulder. The weight slammed into him, nearly crushing him, but he held on, teeth gritted. "Move!" he shouted to the children. They scrambled free, their wide eyes staring at him with awe. Once they were safe, Daniel shoved the beam aside and collapsed to his knees, gasping. The crowd erupted in cheers and cries. The children clung to their mothers, pointing at Daniel. The princess approached slowly, her eyes wide with disbelief. "No noble would risk themselves for commoners," she said softly, almost to herself. Daniel wiped sweat from his brow, wincing. On Earth, everyone matters. Kids, nobles, anyone. If someone's in danger, you help. That's just what we do. For a long moment, Serena only stared at him. Her glowing eyes softened, her lips parting slightly as if words failed her. Finally, she whispered, "You are not like us." But their moment was cut short. A loud shout rang across the square. "Seize them!" Dozens of armored soldiers poured into the marketplace, weapons glowing with crackling energy. Citizens scattered in panic. Daniel tensed, ready to run, but Serena stepped forward, placing herself between him and the soldiers. Her voice rang out, sharp and commanding. "You dare point weapons at me, at your princess?" The soldiers faltered but did not lower their spears. One of them shouted, "Forgive us, princess, but the council demands the human's capture. He is too dangerous to live." The crowd gasped. Citizens whispered angrily, some even stepping closer in Daniel's defense. Serena's eyes blazed with fury. "You will not touch him." The soldiers hesitated again, but their commander stepped forward, armor gleaming. His voice was hard. "Princess, this is beyond your authority. Stand aside or be branded a traitor." Daniel's heart sank. He knew what this meant. If she defied them, she risked her life. Before he could speak, Serena whispered to him without looking back, "Do not move. Do not fear." Then she raised her chin, her voice cutting through the square like a blade. "Then brand me a traitor. But know this, if you strike him, you strike me as well. And you will answer not only to the Empire, but to fate itself." The soldiers froze. None dared take the first step. The prophecy's shadow hung heavy in the air. Daniel stood behind her, stunned. She was risking everything, her title, her life, for him. The crowd began to chant softly, then louder. "Vathar! Vathar!" The commander's face twisted. He raised his weapon anyway. Daniel's instinct screamed he couldn't let her stand alone. Slowly, he stepped forward until he was beside her. His voice was steady, even though fear burned in his chest. "If you want me, you'll have to go through me too." The marketplace fell silent. The alien commander stared at the human standing defiantly next to their princess. His grip on the weapon tightened, then loosened. He growled a command and the soldiers reluctantly stepped back, though their eyes stayed cold. The commander pointed at Daniel. "This is not over. The council will not allow prophecy to guide our empire. We will return." With that, the soldiers withdrew, leaving only silence behind. The crowd erupted in cheers. Citizens rushed forward, bowing to Serena, patting Daniel on the shoulders. The word spread faster than fire. The human stood with the princess. "He is the Vathar." Serena turned to him, her glowing eyes shining with something new, something close to hope. "You should have run," she whispered. Daniel shook his head, breathing hard. "I don't run when someone's standing for me. Especially not you." For a long moment, she just stared at him. Then very faintly, her lips curved into something he hadn't seen before. A smile. The lower city still buzzed long after the soldiers left. Citizens whispered Daniel's name, repeating it like a prayer. Mothers pulled their children close, pointing at him with awe. "The Vathar," they murmured, "the one who shakes stars." Daniel felt the weight of their stares. He hadn't asked for this, he hadn't wanted to be anyone's prophecy. But standing beside Princess Serenia, watching her defend him in front of her own soldiers, he knew he couldn't step back anymore. The princess looked at him with calm eyes, but Daniel could see the storm inside her. "The council will not forgive this," she said softly. "You shamed their soldiers before the common people. They will act." Daniel sighed. "Then what do we do?" Her gaze hardened. "We face them." The next morning, the summons arrived. Daniel and Serenia were called to the High Council chamber, the most sacred hall of the empire. It was a place where nobles gathered, where decisions of war and peace were made. The chamber was vast, built of black stone, lit by fires that burned with blue flames. Tall thrones circled the room, each holding a noble in robes of shimmering gold. At the center stood a raised platform. Waiting there was Lord Kyle, the princess's cousin and commander of the Zarethi armies. Kyle was tall even for his kind, his skin marked with battle scars, his golden armor carved with symbols of victory. His eyes, bright and merciless, fixed on Daniel the moment he entered. "Human," Kyle said with contempt, his voice echoing. "You come into our palace. You touch our princess. You twist the people with false prophecy. And now, you dare to stand against the Empire's will." Daniel opened his mouth to reply, but Kyle raised his hand. No words, only challenge. The nobles stirred. Daniel's translator whispered in his ear, "He is invoking the right of blood duel. Refusal means death." Daniel's stomach dropped. "A duel?" Kyle smiled coldly. "Yes. If you are truly the one fate has chosen, prove it. Face me. If you win, your life is spared. If you lose, you die." Serenia's eyes widened. She stepped forward sharply. "This is madness. He is not a warrior. He came as a diplomat," Kale sneered. "Then let him die as one." "Unless you mean to fight for him, cousin," the council murmured. Serenia's fists clenched, but she knew the law. She could not fight in his place. Daniel's heart pounded. He wasn't a soldier. He had no weapons, no training for alien combat. But if he refused, they'd kill him anyway. Slowly he stepped forward. His voice shook, but carried through the chamber. "I'll fight." Gasps rippled across the council. Serenia turned to him, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Daniel, don't." But Daniel met her gaze, steady. "If I don't, I'm dead. If I run, I'm dead, so I might as well stand." For the first time, Kale's smile faltered. He had expected fear. Instead, he saw resolve. The duel was set in the arena beneath the council chamber, a wide circle of black stone ringed with glowing runes. Nobles filled the stands, their golden masks shining in the dim light. The common people were allowed to watch too, crowding the upper balconies. Serenia stood at the edge, her hands clenched tight, her eyes never leaving Daniel. Daniel entered the arena, dressed only in simple combat leathers. Across from him, Kyle strode in, carrying a long staff tipped with a blade that crackled with energy. His armor shimmered with protective fields. He looked every inch the warlord. Daniel had nothing but his fists. The herald's voice boomed. "By right of blood, a duel is declared. Death or submission shall decide fate." The gong sounded. Kale moved first, a blur of speed. His blade slashed across the air, humming with deadly energy. Daniel barely rolled aside, the strike scorching the stone where he had stood. The crowd roared. Daniel scrambled to his feet. He had no chance of overpowering Kale. He needed to outthink him. Kale came again, thrusting. Daniel ducked, the blade grazing his shoulder, burning through the leather. Pain flared, but he grit his teeth and kept moving. Serenia shouted from the edge, "Do not meet his strength. Use your speed." Daniel nodded quickly. He darted left, then right, forcing Kale to swing wide. Each strike was powerful but heavy, leaving brief openings. Daniel remembered his training. Not combat training, but survival drills, endurance runs, the human ability to keep moving long after stronger creatures tired. That was his only chance. Minutes passed. Kale's strikes grew angrier, harder, but slower. Daniel weaved, rolled, and dodged, his body screaming with exhaustion, but refusing to fall. The crowd began to murmur. Nobles leaned forward. They expected the human to fall quickly. Yet, he endured. Finally, Kale snarled, charging recklessly. Daniel sidestepped at the last second, grabbing a loose stone from the arena floor and slamming it into Kale's leg joint. The warlord stumbled, roaring. The crowd gasped. Daniel didn't waste the chance. He dove forward, tackling Kale's arm. The blade spun out of his grasp, clattering across the floor. They struggled hand to hand. Kale was stronger, far stronger, but Daniel refused to let go. He bit, clawed, used every dirty trick he knew. Humans didn't fight with elegance. They fought to survive. With a final desperate heave, Daniel slammed Kale's head into the stone. The warlord collapsed, dazed. Silence fell. Daniel staggered to his feet, bloodied, bruised, chest heaving. He could barely stand. But he looked at Kale lying on the ground and made his choice. He didn't kill him. Instead, he extended his hand. The arena held its breath. Kale stared up in disbelief. Slowly, painfully, he grasped Daniel's hand, and Daniel pulled him to his feet. A simple gesture. But in Zarethi culture, that gesture was no less than a bond. The crowd erupted, not with anger, but with awe. The common people cheered wildly, chanting Daniel's name. Even the nobles whispered, unsettled but impressed. Serenia stepped forward, her eyes shining with emotion. She had seen bravery, stubbornness, and now mercy, all from a human. Daniel swayed on his feet, exhausted, but he managed a weak smile. He extended his hand again, this time toward Serenia. The chamber fell silent. Every eye turned to the princess. Slowly, her trembling hand reached out. Their palms met. The same warmth surged through her, the same tremor as before. But this time, she did not pull away. She held on. The arena was silent for a long moment after the duel. Daniel's chest heaved, sweat and blood streaking his face, his muscles trembling from exhaustion. Kale sat on the floor, bruised and panting, still struggling to comprehend what had just happened. The nobles stared at Daniel in disbelief. Some were angry, some afraid, but all were silent. Then, slowly, Princess Serenia stepped forward. Her silver skin gleamed under the light, her glowing eyes fixed on Daniel. She raised her voice, clear and commanding. The prophecy has been fulfilled. Not with blood, not with death, but with courage and mercy. This human, Daniel Hayes, has shown the strength of will, the compassion and the perseverance that our people have forgotten. He is the hand that shakes stars, and he shall stand with me as an ally, not as a threat. Gasps and murmurs erupted throughout the chamber. Some nobles whispered furiously, clearly resisting the idea. Others leaned forward, captivated. Even Kale, though angry and wounded, looked up at Daniel with something close to respect. Daniel, still panting, looked at Serenia. I didn't come here to fulfill prophecies. I just wanted peace, he said quietly. Serenia's lips curved slightly. Sometimes, Daniel, peace requires more than words. Sometimes it requires standing firm, even against fate itself. The crowd fell silent again, this time with awe. The common people in the stands cheered, calling out Daniel's name. The chant of Vathar, Vathar, echoed through the city, spreading even beyond the arena walls. In the days that followed, Daniel's courage became legend across Zareth. Citizens spoke of the human who dared to face the Empire's might and won not through strength alone, but through intelligence, endurance, and mercy. Even the lower city, which had long suffered under oppressive rule, began to whisper hope. Princess Serenia visited him often in his quarters, her calm composure slowly returning. She admitted quietly that she had never seen a human act like him before. Humans were strange, unpredictable, yet somehow noble in ways the Zarethi had almost forgotten. "You are not like the nobles here," she said one night, sitting across from him. "You fight, yes, but you also care. You think of others even in danger. That is not common here." Daniel shrugged. "On Earth we grow up learning to look out for each other. Family, neighbors, strangers. It doesn't matter. We help where we can." Serena nodded slowly. "It is admirable and dangerous." Daniel grinned faintly. "Maybe, but I like to think it works out more often than not." The empire itself began to change. The nobles who had opposed Daniel and Serena in the council were forced to step back, at least temporarily. The common people saw a leader who would stand for fairness, a princess who would protect those outside the elite, and a human who had proven that courage and morality could shake even the oldest empire. Kyle, still recovering from his injuries, came to Daniel one evening. The tension between them was sharp, but Kyle's voice was quieter than before. "You are an enigma, human," Kyle said. "We are stronger, faster, armed with blades and power fields. Yet you bested me without weapons, without our techniques." "How?" Daniel shrugged, smiling faintly. "I'm not stronger, I'm stubborn. I don't give up. And I care enough to try every angle until something works. That's what humans do." Kale studied him, then nodded slowly. "Perhaps we have much to learn from you." Months passed. Daniel and Serena worked together to reform parts of the empire, easing the harsh rules that oppressed commoners and introducing small councils to represent the people. Slowly, citizens began to see the empire not as a rigid and fearful system, but as a community capable of fairness and growth. Daniel's presence alone inspired change. His human habits, the willingness to shake hands, to speak to anyone without fear, to act with courage and compassion, spread among the younger nobles and soldiers. Many began to question the old ways. One day, Daniel walked through the lower city with Serena. Children ran up to him, pointing and calling out. Mothers bowed slightly, offering thanks. Merchants smiled, giving small gifts. The city, once grim and fearful, now buzzed with life and optimism. Serena turned to him, eyes glowing softly. "Do you understand now why you trembled me the first time we met?" Daniel frowned. I still don't." "Was it the prophecy?" She shook her head slowly. "Not entirely. Your hand, your presence, it awakened something long dormant in me and in my people. Not fear, not power, but recognition. Recognition that change is possible, that courage matters, that humans are different." Daniel chuckled softly. "Different? Maybe. But I guess being human is enough sometimes." Her lips curved into a faint, genuine smile. "Enough to shake stars." News of the human who had faced the empire spread throughout the galaxy. Other races who had previously dismissed Earth as insignificant began to reconsider. Human diplomats were treated with respect. Human soldiers were watched with caution, and human ingenuity was spoken of in awe. Daniel's actions had changed not just Zareth, but the perception of humanity itself. A single handshake, a stand for mercy, and the courage to face impossible odds had shifted the balance of power. Even centuries of prophecy could not account for something humans carried naturally: the willingness to act, to risk themselves for others, and to stand firm for what was right. One evening, Daniel stood with Serena atop the palace walls, looking out over the city below. The twin moons of Zareth cast a soft glow over the stone streets. Citizens moved, like tiny shadows going about their evening, no longer afraid of invisible rulers watching from above. Serena placed her hand lightly on his arm. "You have changed Zareth, Daniel Hayes, and in doing so you have changed how the galaxy will see humans." Daniel smiled faintly. "I didn't mean to. I just did what I had to. Guess humans can't help it." Serena laughed softly. Perhaps that is why your people are destined for greatness, not because of weapons or speed or technology, but because you choose to act, even when you do not know the outcome. You shake stars simply by existing. Daniel looked at her, realizing the truth of her words. The tremble he had caused in her hand the first day was not fear, not weakness. It had been destiny awakening, a future they could now build together. He extended his hand toward her. This time, there was no hesitation. She took it, and across the city the people watched, the nobles whispered, and the stars above seemed to shine a little brighter. Daniel Hayes, a simple human from Earth, had entered Zareth as a stranger. But he would leave a legend, a symbol of courage, compassion, and the strange, unstoppable nature of humanity. The Empire, once rigid and cold, had begun to learn what humans had always known. That strength was not just in power or numbers, but in heart, in will, and in the willingness to stand for what is right.